Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I am delighted to welcome an expert in wellness, in traditional wellness, from New York, USA, Ting Wu. Ting Wu, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Ash. It's a pleasure to be on your
Thank
podcast.
you. Thank you. Uh, Ting Wu is the owner and founder of NYC Acupuncture and Wellness. So, my first question for you is tell me a little bit about your own journey and what got you interested in the area of acupuncture. And I must mention to you that, 50 years ago, when I was 15 years old, I went through acupuncture in India for my sinus, and I've
Hmm.
never had a sinus problem since then. So, I'm a great believer.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm so happy to hear that. Um, my experience and intro into Chinese medicine and acupuncture was because I used to compete in Thai kickboxing, Muay Thai,
Mhm.
and I had a sports injury that was just nagging and wouldn't go away. And when you're a really young athlete, you're used to being able to kind of like sleep it off, walk
Yeah.
it off. And this was
Mm.
something that really messed with me because I couldn't do the things that I considered integral to myself, which is
Mm.
training and being active without pain. So I went the Western medical, like modern medicine course, and it ended up being like, oh, it's not severe enough for surgery. The labral tear should be able to remodel after you walk it off. But like, it was 8 months of continuous pain, right? Then it was, okay, let's give you painkillers. It's affecting, your sense of self. Let's give you antidepressants, right?
Yeah.
And for something that's so like strictly pain, I knew there had to be something else, right? Thankfully, I had a teammate that had an athletic trainer that's a massage therapist, and his wife's an acupuncturist.
Mhm.
And between the two of them, I was, back training without, with minimal pain, just
Wow.
mostly managing discomfort.
Hmm.
So it gave me my sense of self back. It like gave like, I wasn't competing, but I was able to be like, hey, I can see progress now.
Amazing.
And essentially my journey started because I was like, that's never happening to me again.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And the breadth of what acupuncture and this medicine, this traditional wisdom can offer, like just kind of led me down a rabbit hole. And
Amazing.
that's what started.
What an amazing journey. I mean, imagine building a whole life and a career based on a challenge you yourself faced. Thank you.
Thank you so much for asking. I find that when you have like real life experience and
Yeah.
know like how your patients will feel, right? That brings an intimacy level of like solving not just
Correct.
the direct
Correct.
problem, but everything else.
Amazing. So, my next question for you is how would you describe the philosophy behind
Hmm.
East Asian medicine and how does it differ from the Western approach to health?
Well, I find the Western approach is very segregated, right? Like you have shoulder pain, we're just going to look at your shoulder, right? And there is nuance. They think about severity as well, right? Do you need surgery? Do you need PT, right? Whereas the Eastern approach is a little bit more holistic, right? We also do differential diagnosis of like, okay, is it acute, severity level? But also, if we're just talking about pain, like, is this um pain that's like heat sensation? Like it's like it feels hot, there's swelling, right? Or sometimes the pain's chronic and it's more cold, and you're like, man, it acts up when it's
Mm.
raining, right? So for us, it's not every pain you put ice on,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And so that has been able to really help us make people feel better faster and also prevent it from becoming more of a chronic issue.
Very
Right.
interesting.
So, yeah, so we look at it a little bit more holistically from a slightly different
Yeah,
lens, um, that I found that modern medicine does.
fascinating. And what would you say are some of the common misconceptions you have faced about acupuncture?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's two common misconceptions, and one it's very much related. I feel like people either feel like, oh, acupuncture is gonna be crazy painful, or you don't feel anything at all.
Mm,
And it's very much something in between. I feel like if I'm treating patients for pain and chronic conditions, if I'm touching it with my finger and massaging it and you feel some kind of discomfort, anything I do to the area will
mm,
bring some kind of sensation. If I'm treating more internal medicine,
mm,
right? Be it fertility, be it, like managing perimenopausal, menopausal, those tends to be more distal points. So it tends to
mm,
be away from the direct organ area. And what we're doing is accessing the nerves and the
mm,
nervous system. So there's going to be less sensation for those type of treatments than say orthopedic type
mm,
treatments.
mm. Well
So
said.
there's a difference.
Absolutely. Well said. Can you tell my viewers and listeners what a typical acupuncture session will look like?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I feel like with any professionals, right, in any field, people have different approaches. Some
Mm,
people are a bit more aggressive
yeah.
and they want to kind of throw everything at it, and
Mm,
other people are a little bit more cautious, right? I'm somewhere in the middle. I do
mm,
like to do a consultation first.
mm,
I feel like there's a lot of various misconceptions about acupuncture,
mm.
even between the pain thing and even people coming in going like, I don't like I have insomnia. Is there a point to put me to sleep?
Right, right.
And there's a lot of nuance to insomnia. So I like to do the consultation to find out a few things, like honestly, if I can even help them. If
Mm,
it's something outside my scope, I try my best to do a referral. If it's something that like I can help or even co-treat, what that would look like. Is it one
right.
session? Is it various sessions? And my personal style, I tend to do a lot of channel palpation. So I'll actually I feel in the area and do a physical examination
Mm,
prior to applying the acupuncture points. And
right.
then when I apply the acupuncture, then I allow the acupuncture to do its work.
Mm,
So then what I'll let your body kind of settle and experience it and then make any adjustments depending on the level that you're coming in. Because if you're, let's say, if you're doing insomnia treatments and you're chronically exhausted, you don't have that much resources for me to be
right,
activated, right?
right.
So depending on how you're coming in, we're also modifying the treatment.
Very interesting. Could you talk to me a little bit about the importance of holistic care and how acupuncture fits into an overall wellness strategy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I feel like, there's holistically, there's things that are outside of acupuncture that everybody needs to take care of,
Mm,
like be it nutrition, things, like we did speak about, like, sleep, exercise, those kind of things. I feel like acupuncture fits in to the overall wellness and care in the sense of if your life is something that is high stress, like how do you manage that? If
mm,
you're trying to achieve certain aspects, certain phases in life, meaning if let's say you're a young female and you always had menstruation problems, right? I deal with a lot of female athletes, so transitioning from maybe a sport that requires weight cutting that can affect your menstruation levels
mm,
to maybe you're no longer competing and you're trying to regulate that. Maybe you're now in your fertility journey, you want to start a family, or
mm,
you're moving into perimenopausal and menopause. And I feel like acupuncture helps ease those transitions along with recommendations on
mm.
Chinese medicine, because those are natural phases in life,
Correct,
right?
correct, correct.
So we just want to help make those phases as easy as possible
Mm,
because you have everything else going on in your life you need
mm,
to pay
mm,
attention to.
mm. Amazing. Great response. Um, my next question is, you also do a lot of work with herbal medicine.
Yes, yes, yes.
How do you complement, how do herbs complement uh, acupuncture in treating various conditions? And give me an example if possible.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of power in herbal medicine.
Mm,
There's even some aspects that I find herbal medicine to be almost more beneficial than acupuncture,
mm,
specifically like dermatological cases, right?
mm,
Because you need consistent, constant input, right? And then there's other cases that, let's say, if anxiety and stress is the main thing that is taking over your life, acupuncture helps deregulate the nervous system. But let's say you have a huge project on the line and you're like, I can't come in every day. I can't come in even once a week. There's herbal medicine that you can take to kind of help modulate that response a little bit. It doesn't help clear it, completely, but then you might not necessarily want it to be cleared completely if you have like a huge project coming up. Right. So like things that are a lot of internal medicine, we would things that need more consistent care.
mm,
We would do internal herbal medicine, but even trauma, we have like external paste and
mm,
herbal medicine that we can put on to
mm,
help, reduce swelling or things like that.
mm. Very interesting. Uh, I think when I was reading about you, I was fascinated to read about the fusion treatment plans that you have developed.
Mhm.
Um, Tell me about these fusion treatment plans and how do these differ from a traditional approach?
Well, what I've been incorporating into my practice is things like not just traditional classical
Mm,
acupuncture, but also electric stimulation acupuncture, and even like microcurrents, right?
mm,
To treat things like for the vagus nerve for patients that are suffering from POTS or from tinnitus, those kind of things. We have found that and to be incredibly beneficial, especially in conjunction with acupuncture, right? So then we can do the currents, the microcurrents to help affect the nerve,
mm,
and the acupuncture to help actually extend the effects.
mm.
So we've been doing fusion treatments depending on, like case by case what patients are coming in for.
Very interesting. Uh, can acupuncture be beneficial for children or elderly patients? And if yes, how do you adjust the approach?
Oh, absolutely. I find children tends to be very easy to treat. They don't have a lot of misconceptions coming
Yeah.
in.
Mm,
And when you don't have as much fear of, say, like, like needles or anything like that,
mm,
a lot of them fall right asleep and they kind of accept the messaging of acupuncture much easier. And then they
mm.
wake up. And also, it's hard to have a placebo effect on a child,
Yeah.
right? They're either eating again, they're either sleeping again, or they're not,
Mm,
right?
mm.
So you can almost see the effects much sooner.
Right.
And for the elderly, if we're treating them for chronic cases, right? And also depending on the constitution,
Mm,
right? If there's someone that is not as mobile, right, or have metabolic disorders and things, we kind of have to go in real slow,
mm.
right? I can't throw the whole kitchen sink at them because then the last thing I want is for them to have a rebounding effect.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So then we adjust the treatment to tone it down a little bit so then we can treat it slowly and then
Mm,
and it's easier on their body as they're
right.
recovering and they don't suffer from the shock of the gap.
Mm, amazing. You've also done a lot of work with athletes, and you yourself have been an athlete. How
Mhm.
does acupuncture help athletes recover from sports injuries and prevent future injuries?
Oh, I mean, like, it depends. Treatment plans will look different depending on if an athlete, like, if you're in season, right? If you have a fight coming up, or if you have a race coming up, or you're like in the midst of, I don't know, hockey, soccer season, the type of treatment that we want to give you to get you out of pain to essentially get back on the field is
Mm,
going to be very different, vastly different than if you're in an off season and you have time to actually rest and recuperate,
mm,
right? So first we want to differentiate where performance level you are at,
mm,
right? If we have time to do deeper work or if we have to make sure you're just functional and you can perform, right?
mm,
And that Plus, a lot of injuries tend to accrue because unless it's, blunt force trauma and there's
Mm,
something accidental, it's usually tension over time that's
mm,
been unaddressed. And then a stress point happens. And then now you have a sprain, a pull, heaven forbid something rips or something like that. So we do a lot of maintenance to prevent that added pressure from getting to a state that they will
mm.
have long lasting effects where they might have to, like, pull out of a season or something like that.
Right. Wow. Wow. Uh, Tell me a little bit more about how acupuncture can be used to treat anxiety and mental health challenges.
Yes, absolutely. Uh, for a lot of mental health challenges, I actually co-treat
Hmm.
with our patient's therapist,
Mm,
right? And sometimes the treatment plan will change depending on, if they are undergoing treatment to address some traumas,
mm,
like PTSD, that kind of thing. Sometimes it's supportive, right? So that they can deal with the emotions, but don't have as long of a lingering effect. So that is affecting so much of the rest of their life,
mm,
right? If you're dealing with like minor anxieties and that's maybe affecting your sleep, but you're otherwise able to go out through life without much inconvenience, then we're talking about stabilizing you. We're talking about making sure that you have a little bit more bandwidth in your nervous system so that your anxiety is not kicking up. And that's more maintenance than,
mm,
say, if my patient's doing intense work and deep
mm,
diving with their therapist.
mm. Amazing. And I'm sure this is something which a lot of my viewers and listeners would love to understand. How can acupuncture be used to support weight loss? That seems to be a
Yes,
universal challenge for humanity.
yes, yes. Well, a lot of times there's different aspects of weight loss, right? Some people, if they have, let's say, um, a digestive issue, a
Mm,
gut issue, right? And they're not actually absorbing the nutrients.
mm,
And that's what makes them more hungry,
mm,
right? Your body's limited amount of efficiency in absorbing nutrients. And then you don't get what you need and your body tells you, eat more, we need more of this resource.
mm.
So that kind of treatment, we want to treat the root of the problem, which
Yeah.
is the gut, and like help heal your gut health, help, so that you can absorb more of the existing nutrients you're getting in.
Mm,
And then that way you're not, constantly getting that feedback from your body.
mm,
If the root of the problem for, let's say, hunger is because you anxiety eat, this is very,
mm,
soothing for you, then things that I could do is not only treat the nervous system, but give you even like an ear seed that you can press on so
mhm,
that it gives you something physical to do to not only activate your nervous system to
mm.
suppress the hunger like sensation, but also instead of like giving something physical this way, you're massaging and giving your body a physical thing to do, an
Wow.
action.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that really helps with the
It
brain.
obviously must have meant some deep study on your part to have understood so much details. I think we have time for two more or three more questions.
Okay.
How can acupuncture and people who are immunocompromised
Mm.
or dealing with chronic illness, how can acupuncture help here?
Well, there's certain types of chronic illnesses that
Mm,
we, right? I treat patients everywhere from like failed back surgery, where if they've done the most interventions and they're still in pain, right? For patients such as that, we're doing maintenance. We're making sure that their life is pain management, reduce as much discomfort as possible,
mm,
because, unfortunately, I can't go in and physically fix anything,
correct.
right? The existing surgery is there.
Mm,
Um, so for that, we help ease the level of discomfort they're in. For patients that are dealing with other chronic conditions that, let's say, I also treat patients that are undergoing oncology, like cancer care,
mm,
right? So if they are, in the midst of treatment, right? We help them manage the side effects, potentially nausea, fatigue, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if, let's say, when they're kind of on the other side, they're going back for regular testing, right? We're also helping them recover, right? Manage like how much chemo and radiation potentially took out of them, right? And then help them recover an energy level that they can function day to day as they get towards their, bell ringing of being cancer free. Right. So depending on what type of chronic condition, we either help you make life easier, and more livable, or we help you resolve things slowly over time.
Wow. My last question for you. What do you see as the future of acupuncture in integrative and preventative healthcare?
I actually see much, much more cohesion, right? I know a lot of my colleagues in acupuncture are expanding their practices in different states, even doing functional medicine, finding out a way to bridge the understanding of like herbal medicine and also our supplement, our vitamins and minerals, and how they can work with each other, how to so that you don't have to take 56 pills a day, and also like what things can we manage more preventatively, especially for patients that are kind of in between for modern medicine, right? Some people they've graduated physical therapy, they can do activities of daily living, but they're not quite strong enough to hit an exercise class, and they are getting re-injured every time they try.
Yeah.
So those gaps in between are like that help make living easier is where I find holistic medicine really beneficial for.
Amazing. And on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you for covering so many different details of acupuncture. I think we covered a lot of ground. We started with talking about East Asian medicine and the difference. We spoke about misconceptions. We spoke about how acupuncture can actually help in relieving chronic pain, sports injuries, managing weight loss, handling anxiety and mental health. And at each stage, what I learned from you was how important it is to go to the root of it rather than go and just cure the actual thing that you're seeing. I think that is probably one big difference that you told us about Eastern medicine and Western medicine. Go to the root and find a cure for the root rather than symptom. Thank you so much for speaking to me about acupuncture, and all the very best to you.
Thank you so much, Ash, for having me. You do amazing work here at the brand called You, and keep doing what you're doing. I love listening and learning more about the other professionals you have on as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the brand called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.